all interested parties will be given an opportunity to be heard. Application number 338-24, John and Sabrina Kaminsky. Permission to leave semi-in-ground pool having rear yard of 15.9 feet instead of required 18 feet. When you hear your name, just please come up to the podium. Residence AA District, northwest corner of North Gillette Avenue and Ridgewood Court, Bayport.
Good evening. Could you just give us your name and address?
Sabrina Kaminsky, 510 Gillette Avenue, Bayport, New York, 11705.
And you're just here seeking the variance for the in-ground pool?
Yes.
Any questions from the board on this?
No questions.
Planning, any comments on this? No comment. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in this application? All right, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to grant the application. Second.
Second, all in favor? All right, application is granted. Thank you.
Application number 339-24, John and Ann McCosey. Permission to erect second-story addition, 5 by 19, leaving side yard of 13.7 feet instead of required 14 feet, and floor area ratio of 27.86% instead of permitted 25%, and to leave driveway on side property line not having a required setback of 4 feet. Residence B District, east side of Degnon Boulevard, 150 feet south of Allens Point Road, Bayshore.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thomas Floor, the architect for the project, 60 Carlton Avenue, Suite 202, Islip Terrace, New York, 11752. The intent of this application is to erect a second-story addition. We're requesting an existing side yard setback, 13.7 instead of the required 14. Home is an existing 1.5-story cape with an existing second floor. This proposal is for a rear shed dormer directly in line with the existing home, which has the 13.7 side yard setback. FAR we are requesting is 27.86 instead of the permitted 25%. And then lastly, a side yard setback to an existing driveway of 0 feet instead of the permitted 4 feet. This property was in front of this board back in 2002. So it kind of creates its own precedent as it was approved for a side yard setback of 3.9 feet and 11.7 feet instead of the required 14 feet. Total side yards of 15.6 feet instead of the required 28, and an FAR of 33.3% instead of the permitted 25%. But they never moved forward with the construction on that application back in 2002. If the board should have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. As far as the driveway, I spoke to the owner. He says the neighbor next door has no issues with it. It's been there around 24 years. There's been 2 different owners at the neighboring house, and he says neither has an issue. It does extend over the property line. I know the board can't rule on that. We're just requesting the 0 feet.
Any questions from the board? Planning, do you have any comments on this? No? Is there anyone else who would like to be heard in this application? Okay, I'll take a motion, please.
Second.
All in favor? Application is granted.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Application number 340-24, Harry Hughes Jr. and Geraldine Goodfellow. Permission to erect second-story addition, 21.1 by 26.8 irregular, leaving side yard of 16.3 feet instead of required 18 feet, and total side yards of 32.6 feet instead of required 36 feet. And to leave shed having side yard of 0.5 feet instead of required 2 feet. Residence AA District, 278 Cluster, north side of Norman Drive, 155 feet east of Aft Court, Bohemia.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I have offices at 1040 West Jericho Turnpike, Smithtown, New York. If you take a look at the site plan submitted by the architect, you can see that the existing dwelling already has 16.3 foot side yards on each side. We want to go up with a second story. Mr. and Mrs. Hughes have 2 children. The house is just not big enough. So the second story will contain 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Mr. Hughes grew up in Holbrook and purchased this house in 2019. With respect to the shed, I guess he didn't think about how close it was to the line, and nobody sought to fix that at the time. So we don't think that the variance would produce an impact on adjacent properties. They've had these 2 side yards for many years. although we're going up, most towns do require us to ask for a variance, even though the side yards are actually set already. We don't believe the variance is substantial. It's less than 2 feet. And again, with respect to the shed, I can't say it's not substantial, but on the other hand, it really has no adverse effect on anyone. Whether the variance would have an adverse effect on the environment, we think not. Whether this difficulty was created by the applicant, no, we're asking the board for its favorable consideration. Again, the shed just happened to be there when Mr. and Mrs. Hughes bought the house. They want to stay in Islip. Mr. Hughes is a New York City police officer, and he chose this house because at the time, that's what he could afford. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions from the board?
No.
Or planning, any comments on this? No. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard in this application? Okay,
Make a motion to approve the application.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Application number 341-24, Michael P. and Carrie Morgan Amodio. Permission to erect one-story addition, 17 by 20 irregular, leaving side yard of 11.5 feet instead of required 14 feet, and to leave driveway on side property line not having, and patio having side yard of 0.7 feet instead of required 4 feet each. Residence B District, west side of Ferndale Boulevard, 75 feet north of Elm Street, Islip.
Hi, I'm Carrie Amodio, 94 Ferndale Boulevard, Islip, New York, 11751. We are just looking to add on to the back of our house in line with the existing structure. The patio in the back was something that was there when I bought the house 6 years ago. It's probably 20 years old. It's not actually a patio used for patio purposes. It's just a small slab of concrete behind my garage.
What's the height of the patio? Grade?
The height of it?
Is it on the ground? Grade?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. It's just a slab of concrete, a couple inches thick.
Any questions for the board?
No.
No. Planning, any comments? Is there anyone else who would like to be heard in this application? Make a motion, please.
I'll make a motion. Second.
All in favor? Application is granted.
Thank you.
Application number 342-24, William and Elizabeth McGuire. Permission to leave in-ground pool having side yard of 9.1 feet instead of required 14 feet, and pool patio having side yard of 2.9 feet instead of required 6 feet. Residence A District. Anybody here on that application? William and Elizabeth McGuire? All right. Second call. Application number 343-24, Stephen and Lindsay Cochran. Permission to erect two-story addition, 12.5 by 31.6, leaving side yard of 9.9 feet instead of required 14 feet, total side yards of 27.1 feet instead of required 28 feet, and floor area ratio of 28.72% instead of permitted 25%, and to leave shed on side property line not having required setback of 2 feet. Residence A District, west side of Namdak Avenue, 375 feet north of Babe Ruth Street, Bayshore.
Good evening. Glenn Graham with Graham Associates, representing the owners. This application involves a modest two-story addition on the south side of the home or the left side of the pictures I just handed in. The FAR is well under the 30% normally granted by the board. We'd be happy to remove the shed variance if the garage addition is approved tonight. There is variances, about 6 for both first and second floor additions within 500 feet. They range from 9.2 to 13. We're seeking 9.9. Take any questions that the board has.
Any questions?
No.
Planning, any comments on this?
I would just think to clarify the precedent is mostly for one-story additions now, whether or not the board does not. As far as second stories goes, it's not really precedent, although it does seem that I just couldn't tell you how many of those.
Any questions now? Anybody else like to be heard in this application? And you said, mentioned something about the shed?
I'd withdraw the shed if we get this approved because we're creating a garage, so the shed would no longer be needed. The last picture that I handed in, the shed is more like a kind of storage for rakes. It's small and it's under 6 feet, but again, we would remove it.
All right, so you want to strike that from the call?
If the board sees fit to grant the rest of the application.
All right, I will take a motion to amend the call to remove the reference to the shed, so remove and to leave shed on side property line not having required setback of 2 feet.
Motion.
Second, that's removed from the application. And I'll take a motion on the application as a modified.
Motion to approve the application as modified.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Can't push you too hard, you got a cold.
Yeah.
I don't want to rush you too much.
Go ahead.
Application number 344-24, James and Marie Zegville. Permission to install above-ground pool, leaving side yard of 8.5 feet instead of required 14 feet, and to leave shed having rear yard of 1.8 feet instead of required 2 feet. Residence A District, east side of Louis Kossuth Avenue, 100 feet south of First Street, Ronkonkoma.
Hey, good evening. How you doing? I'm Jim, Ms. Marie Zegville, 2249 Louis Kossuth Avenue, Ronkonkoma. We're looking to install a semi-ground pool. We needed a 14-foot off the property line, and we're kind of burdened with if you look at the pictures, a very shallow backyard, and the only spot we have is on the one side that I showed with where you can see the shed. My issue is we only have 26 feet from the fence to the walkway. And I have the guy told me there's a 2-foot over dig off the walkway that we would need if he digs. So it's only gonna leave us, I think the most I can go off the fence would be 9 feet. That's what we'd be looking for if possible.
Do you have any precedents in the area?
There's precedence for that's usually attention above ground pools in the area about 8.5 being a little more than what we usually a little bit.
Can you bring it to 10 feet?
I don't know if the 10 feet is gonna be enough, because like I said, I need to be 2 feet. The pool is 15 feet wide.
Right.
That's about the smallest pool we can get for that area. And I need 2 feet off of the sidewalk where they're gonna dig to put it in, because it's semi-in-ground.
No, you don't know what those were. Okay. So,
Any other questions on that?
this-
If it matters at all, the impacted neighbor there, you have a pool very close to his yard on that.
My only concern is now we're at 8.5. We're never gonna stay now.
Well, there was a case where someone was granted 6, I think it was,
Okay.
No.
No,
No.
Town of Iceland.
no, it was actually right around the corner.
I mean, it was years ago.
It was years ago, but it was 6 feet instead of 14.
The one thing we seem to be burdened with
What
is
was the
that,
address on that decision?
That was, I have it right here if you want to see it. It was 15 First Street, Ronkonkoma. 15 First Street, Ronkonkoma.
Yeah.
we know that Town of Islip requires 10 feet. However, our house, for some reason, sits, what we were told, in Zone A,
We don't,
which requires 14 feet. So that to us gives us a lot more to ask for, because for some reason, I don't know if it's a school that situates with us, that puts us in Zone A,
yeah.
but most neighbors all have 10 feet. or in the town, and we are now required 14 feet. So that really,
Well, it's the whole neighborhood, but I think it's.
that hurts. It just, we're asking for a little more, just.
If you could look
You could do
even up
nine.
there, a lot of the yards by us are a lot bigger than ours.
Make sure he doesn't measure from the fence. Yeah.
9 would be like the least I would be able to go.
Yeah.
That I'd be able to go off the fence. But I think if you look at the survey, I was speaking to somebody and they said the survey is almost a foot, the fence is almost a foot off of the line, the property line.
Yeah, the fence.
9 feet is.
Yeah, you gotta measure from the property line, not the fence.
Right, I measured from the
Right.
fence, so
And then the survey told us we're actually a foot in with the fence. So
At some
technically we
points.
gain a foot that way.
Yep.
But we didn't,
is that a foot? I really don't. 9 would be perfect.
yes.
All right. Mr. Sullivan, you wanna change the call of the meeting?
Or just granted us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you so,
you
so
very
much. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Application number 345-24, Ruth Begley, permission to leave roofed over cellar entrance having side yard of 11 feet instead of required 18 feet and floor area ratio of 25.6% instead of required 25%. Residence Double Lake District, 278 Cluster, north side of Blue Point Road West, 360 feet west of Waverly Avenue, Holtzville.
Hi, Ruth Bailey, 294 Blue Point Road West, Holtzville, New York, 11742. I'm requesting to leave an overhang over my basement. I put that there just because with the extreme rain, sometimes I'm flooding in my basement. I have a drain at the base of the basement, but it's not adequate to accommodate some of the water.
Any questions from the board on this? No planning, any comments?
No.
I'll take a motion. Favor?
In case we needed it. That's fine.
Application is granted.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Yes. I think I would talk about it later in the day today. Printed it out. And then the file is with me. Application number 346-24, Edward Hanna, permission to establish two-family, family use only pursuant to section 68-419.1, to leave portico having front yard of 18.5 feet instead of required 25 feet, shed having side yard of 1.2 feet instead of required 2 feet, shed having side yard of 1.8 feet instead of required 4 feet, and shed having rear yard of 2.4 feet instead of required 4 feet. Patio having side yard of 1.6 feet and rear yard of 2.8 feet instead of required 4 feet each, and driveway having side yard of 1.2 feet instead of required 4 feet. Residence B District, south side of Ava Drive, 97.34 feet west of Manatuck Boulevard, Bay Shore.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Roxanne Trella, Dynamic Expediting Services with offices at 231 Islip Avenue, Islip, New York. We're here tonight to establish a two-family, family use only. The application is based on age, and all of the identifications and required paperwork were submitted to the Board of Appeals. We're also here for an existing front portico. The front yard setback is 18.5 instead of the required 25 feet. However, the front portico is a does have a permitted encroachment of 5 feet, which would realistically bring this variance to 20 feet required. There's pillars at the base of the portico, which bring it to the 18.5. The only precedent that we were able to find with something similar to this was case number 525-02. It was a deck with steps to the dwelling, and it maintained a front yard setback of 19 feet instead of the required 25 feet. We're also here for 3 sheds. All sheds are small in nature, 143 square feet, 194 square feet, and 150 square feet, with minimal relief requested. There's also a small patio having a side yard of 1.6 feet with a rear yard of 2.8 instead of the required 4 feet each, and a driveway that maintains a 1.2 side yard instead of 4 feet required. That driveway was enlarged sometime between 2004 and 2007.
Is the family member's mother-in-law?
Yes.
Angelina
I'm sorry?
Celebrity?
Yes. Angelina, we gave a couple of IDs.
Planning, any comments? on this?
I would just, that Portico, whatever, motions. I know this one is written up there. But board to be with the construction. I don't think it's unreasonable to see.
And the sheds, et cetera, no issue.
It's a lot of them, but it's,
Any comments from the board? Oh, does anyone else like to be heard in this application? Make a motion, please. All in favor? Yes, thank you, yes, for a period of 3 years. Granted.
Thank you.
Second over here?
Yep, I got it.
All in favor? Aye. Application is granted.
Thank you.
Yeah. Quiet, huh? I didn't hear the hum. Application number 347-24, JDM Property Estates LLC. Permission to erect two-story addition with portico, leaving front yard of 36.65 feet instead of required 50 feet, side yards of 13 feet and 19.4 feet instead of required 25 feet each, and total side yards of 32.4 feet instead of required 60 feet. And to erect second-story deck, leaving side yard of 19.6 feet instead of required 25 feet. Residence AAA District, north side of West Halley Lane, 340.11 feet west of Wheeler Road, Central Islip.
Good evening again. Roxanne Trella, Dynamic Expediting Services with offices at 231 Islip Avenue, Islip, New York. Okay, so the two-story additions with the front portico required two separate variances. One for the front yard of 36.65 feet instead of the required 50 feet, and another variance for the side yard of 13 feet and 19 feet instead of the required 25 feet, with a total side yards required of 60, only maintaining 32.4. The house is about 30 feet wide. 2/3 of the front yard setback is actually for a front portico, which is about 18.5 feet wide and would actually meet the permitted encroachment. The remaining 11.8 feet protrudes about 4 feet into the front yard. That small addition was erected to be in line with the front porch and was utilized to enlarge the kitchen area. The 1- and 2-story additions that were erected are in line with the existing dwelling, none of which protrude any further into any of the side yards than the original dwelling. I'd also like to point out that the front of the dwelling actually does maintain the 25 feet at the corner, but because of the oddly shaped parcel, the side yard becomes increasingly deficient towards the rear of the property until it reaches the 13 feet being requested. We're also requesting permission to erect a second-story deck that would leave a side yard of 19.6 feet instead of the required 25 feet. The deck itself actually conforms to the side yard setbacks. The relief is for the stairs leading to the second-story deck. The deck is actually about 30 feet from the side yard. It's a small deck, 10 by 10. We were able to locate some precedent in the area. We have one precedent, case number 241-11. This was a request for a second-story addition, and the zoning board granted relief of a front yard of 32.65 feet instead of 50 feet, and a side yard of 19.52 and 22.08. We also have another precedent, 550-05. This was for 2 one-story additions and 3 second-story additions. This granted a side yard of 1.89 on one side and 22.51 on the other side, giving a total side yard of 24.4 instead of the 60 feet. We also have 12 West Haley Lane. This was ZBA 358-03. This was for a one-story addition, and it granted a side yard of 22.1 instead of the required 25 feet, with a total side yard of 44.8. This,
I'm sorry, I'm just wondering. I know it's difficult to find the exact, but your application is to build a two-story, a full two-story, 13 feet from the property.
Correct.
And the last precedent you gave us, unless I didn't hear it, was one story at 22.
Correct.
I mean, that's so totally different. That's the best you got.
Nope, it's not the best I got. The best one I had was
Yeah, why include that?
it was more, I was getting to the end of it, which is that these houses were erected in the 40s. They were never zoned AAA at that time. They were built, it looks like the other side of Wheeler Road is Residence B. It looks like they may have initially had Residence B zoning. They were upzoned sometime in the late 60s. So those precedents were more to show that anyone in this area who does have to erect some kind of addition or alteration to their home is going to require a variance relief from the board, because you're looking at AAA zoning, which is made for a 40,000 square foot lot, versus Residence B, which is 7,500 square feet required. So it's a,
They're a variant. It's a variant. I mean, do you have anything? What's the best you have? Two stories at 13 feet, a full second, not an addition where it's a 4-foot dormer or doghouse. What do you got that's a little more similar than a story?
the first one was a second story addition with a 19-foot side yard. Then we have the,
Way off. I mean, my concern is 13 feet.
it's 13 feet at one point. So if you look at the survey, the front of the house actually maintains 25. As you go further into the yard, it does get a little bit smaller, being 13. But in addition to that, the property owner is also going through a lot line change where he did purchase a portion of the rear of the property of his neighbors. So once, if unfortunately, he has no heat in the home, and the plumbing permit won't be released until the building permit is released, and the building permit can't be released until the zoning board makes a decision.
That's not our problem. I asked. My concern is, I don't know if I feel comfortable voting yes on 13 feet. I know it's descending, but we're going to get somebody reading off my precedents. There's 13 feet that the floor, blah, 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 and we're never going to know who, what, where, what, when. I just really close for full second. That's my concern.
There's only a small portion of this neighborhood that was upzoned to AAA. It's 2 blocks. Everything else in the area is either A or B zoning and conforms to those setbacks. So as far as this creating an unlikely precedent for another neighbor, it most likely will not happen. The applications that have come before the board have been approved. The 1-story addition, this is a one-off. This is not something we would typically see, was granted at 1.89 feet. Yes. It would create a conforming side yard. He is, but the process through engineering takes a significant amount of time, and the building permit is being held based off of this hearing. No, 2 blocks. 14. I believe they're buying about 5 feet from each neighbor, 74-wheeler, 72-wheeler. Kind of in line where the rear of the property ends, it's kind of going to come straight from there. Yes. Right where the furthest blue line is, they're coming down there. They are, and the application's already been submitted to engineering. My only issue is the building permit not being released. Thank you.
In light of the unique circumstances.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Application number 348-24, Jorge Espinoza and Clarissa Silva. Permission to establish accessory apartment pursuant to Islip Town Code, Section 68-602, and to leave driveway having side yard of 1.5 feet instead of required 4 feet. Residence A District, north side of Tabor Street, 80 feet west of Virgil Drive, Brentwood.
Hi, good evening. I'm looking permit to establish accessory apartment.
Can you give us your name and address, please? Name,
My name is Jorge Espinoza,
your address?
167 Tabor Street in Brentwood, New York.
And the accessory apartment you're here for, and then also the driveway with the...
Yes.
Planning, any comments on this? No. Any questions from the board on this? No. No? Anybody else like to be heard in this application? Okay, I'll take a motion, please. A second?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Application is granted for a period of 3 years.
All right, thank you.
Application number 349-24, Matthew and Crystal Perino. Permission to erect second-story addition, 22.3 by 27, leaving side yard of 12.3 feet instead of required 14 feet, and floor area ratio of 26.3% instead of permitted 25%. To leave pool deck 6 inches in height, having front yard of 9 feet instead of required 25 feet, and detached garage with awning 15.1 by 23.2, having rear yard of 3.7 feet instead of required 10 feet. Residence B District, north side of Iroquois Street, 220 feet west of Parkway Boulevard, Ronkonkoma.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Gennaro Cozzolino, 2125 Deer Park Avenue, Deer Park, New York, 11729. Here for the homeowners, Matthew and Crystal Perino of 231 Iroquois Street, Ronkonkoma, also known as Section 20, Block 3, Lot 42.001, located in a Residence B zone. We're requesting relief from the board to build a 22.3 by 27-foot second floor addition. The proposed addition requires a variance for side yard setback, requesting to build at 12.3 feet from permitted 14 feet, a difference of 1.7 feet. Variance for FAR, requesting 26.3% from permitted 25%, a difference of 1.3%. Proposed addition is to be built over the existing footprint of the house and not to encroach any further into the side yard. We also have variances to maintain a 6-inch high pool deck in the front yard with the front yard setback of 9 feet instead of 25 feet, difference of 16 feet. Variance to maintain a 15 by 23 overhang off of the detached garage with a rear yard setback of 3.7 feet instead of the 10 feet, difference of 6.3 feet. And permission to leave 6-foot fence on front property line instead of 15 feet. Proposed additions and existing structures will have no significant impact to the environment. Thank you.
Did you say something, 6 foot? That's
5 foot, 5 foot, 5 foot.
fence in the fall of the meeting? Am I missing something? No?
Well,
The pool deck 6 high.
6 inches high.
6 inches, yes.
Oh, that was a mistake.
I said,
There's no 6-foot fence.
No.
no.
Well, the problem is you received 2 zoning denials a day apart from one another. You received one on February 12 and one on February 13. So the one you submitted to our office was the February 12. It didn't indicate that you were requesting a fence.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
little bit of an issue that the zoning denials get sent with such frequency to the applicants and then the
I
applicant.
understand, okay.
So, I'm not sure that how the board would have looked upon this 6-foot fence running along the front property line.
Negatively.
Probably, yes.
But it sounds like it'd be denied anyway.
Correct. Well, there's a
Well,
good
there's
photo.
pictures of it right here.
We're going to, they sent
How high is the
16
fence? Is it
photos.
6 feet or 5?
It's 5 feet.
5 feet is what he's saying. No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And we don't have a survey and.
You want to come back,
fence,
put this
yeah.
all together, make sure we do it all right at one piece?
No, just,
Also,
look at
I mean,
it.
they're here.
Just deny it.
I know, but you.
So-
Rather us do this one, and then you come back and go to the next one, do it all in one shot. You're already here.
We're here, we'd rather get this over with and take care of the fence next. Mr. Chairman.
Anything else on the fence, on the other side?
Just the fence. We will come back. We will come back for the fence. Sure. Why, Mr. Wexler? No, I understand. We'll make the changes and we'll come back. No, the awning is attached to the garage. Has nothing to do with the garage. The garage is pre-existing. Yes. Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. I think we'll do that. I understand. Yes. Understand. We, well, what is the max square footage that 500? 499. We'll adjourn and we'll come back. Yes. Okay, I have another one. No, no. That one I think is okay. We'll wait for the answer. Thank you.
50-24, Peter and Christine Rodasheen, permission to erect one-story addition, 26 by 26.4 irregular, leaving side yard of 9.4 feet instead of required 14 feet, and to leave patio and driveway on side property line, not having a required setback of 4 feet. Residence B District, south side of Union Boulevard, 420 feet west of Hemlock Lane, Bay Shore.
Good evening again. Gennaro Cozzolino, 2125 Deer Park Avenue, Deer Park, New York, 11729. Here for the homeowner, Christine Radishin of 1350 Union Boulevard, Bay Shore, also known as Section 392, Block 2, Lot 7, located in the Residence B zone. We're requesting relief from the board to build a 26 by 26.4 foot, one-story side addition with an attached deck. The proposed addition requires a variance for side yard, requesting to build at 9.4 feet from permitted 14 feet, a difference of 4.6 feet, and to maintain a driveway and pavered patio with a side yard setback on the property line instead of 4-foot setback. Go ahead. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Oh, has anybody, before we start the 6:30s, has anybody arrived on the application of, it's 342-24, William and Elizabeth McGuire? Okay. I'm gonna hand, oh, you found it, good. That's not McGuire. That's the one, the other one I had in my office. It's coming up. Application number 351-24, Christopher and Jessica Farajari. Permission to erect second-story deck, 18 by 18.9, over patio, resulting in floor area ratio of 30.7% instead of permitted 25%, and spiral staircase to deck, leaving side yard of 10 feet instead of required 14 feet. Residence A District, west side of Davidson Lane West, 1,216.19 feet south of Magoon Road, West Islip.
Good evening, everyone. Jessica and Christopher Farajari. We're here for 8 Davidson Lane West in West Islip. We are proposing a renovation of the existing 4-bedroom house to become a 5-bedroom house to accommodate our growing family. We're also proposing adding square footage to allow for a study, given my husband and I are both working professionals that would like to have a home office. We're also proposing including a covered patio, which is not habitable space, that accounts for approximately 350 square feet or 2% of the FAR request. Together, these improvements result in an FAR of 30.7%, which we believe fits within the nature and the character of the neighborhood. We had submitted a FOIL request and found other homes within a 500 square foot radius that have been granted variances by the board in excess of what we're seeking. Specifically, we had found board approvals of 31.8%, 37.8, 30.4, 31.9, 35%, and 33.8. Based on these prior approvals, we do not believe our proposal would alter the nature or the character of the neighborhood in any way. In addition, our lot is one of the smallest on the block. So while we are seeking variance approval, the resulting house would certainly not be the largest on the block, and it's consistent with the prevailing conditions of the neighborhood. As far as the requested side yard relief, the footprint of the addition is in line with the existing house, and it complies with the 14-foot required side yard. It's only the spiral staircase that's protruding into the protected side yard area. And given the relatively limited use of that staircase, we don't believe it would have any adverse impacts on the neighborhood. We also plan to put in additional trees there, so it would be something that the even neighboring property would likely not even see. We've also spoken to numerous neighbors, and most have expressed that they've undergone similar renovation projects on their homes in recent years. Based on the established development pattern of the neighborhood and the limited impacts of that side yard variance, we believe the requested variances are not substantial, and we're asking the board to grant our application.
You must be a lawyer.
Not.
Really? Oh, I mean, delivery was very good.
Oh, well, thank you.
When you said we're requesting the court.
Oh, the board. Sorry, I said board.
That really.
Oh, no, the board. No.
Yeah, not here.
Just my bad pronunciation.
Okay, is there any questions from the board on this?
No.
No planning, any comments on this? Okay, she did a good job. Okay. Anyone else like to be heard in this application? All right, I'll take a motion.
Second.
All in favor? All right, application's granted.
Thank you for your time.
Good job.
Very neat file. Okay, and that's the one I just passed. Yeah. That was me. That's right. Application number 352-24, Joseph Tringali and Maria Strada Tringali. Permission to leave, second-story addition having rear yard of 19.1 feet instead of required 40 feet. Residence AAA District, northeast corner of Lamson Street and Pond Road, Bohemia.
Good evening, Joseph Tringali, 645 Lansing Street, Bohemia. As mentioned, we are asking relief for the rear setback to be at 19.1 feet. We were previously granted a approved variance to have the setback at 20 feet. The covered patio was built. The final survey was done and submitted, and we found out that it ended up being 19.1 square feet instead of the required 20 feet. That's a difference of approximately 10 to 11 inches, and that is what we were requesting the variance for.
Any questions from the board? No question. Planning, any comments?
There was a question, about people that in the periods of.
And it's not technically a second story. It's a first story house with a hip roof, and that particular corner of the attic is the roof comes down to the gable over the covered patio. Yes, there is not living space
So to be
on the second
clear,
floor.
it was the first time the board heard your application and granted the 20, there was no reference to a second story in that location.
I think that wording came back in the verbiage from the denial letter, and that was used in.
Well, it's because your surveyor indicated it. Just
Okay.
from looking outside, the surveyor
Yeah.
called it a second story,
Okay.
which they shouldn't have done because it's
My
misleading.
apologies if we did it.
It's your surveyor. It's not a second story. It's an attic.
Does anyone else would like to be heard in this application?
Make a motion to approve the application.
All in favor? It's granted.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Application number 353-24, Karina and Warren Audi III. Permission to leave portico resulting in floor area ratio of 28.7% instead of required 25%. Second story deck having side yard of 13.7 feet instead of required 14 feet, and total side yards of 27.6 feet instead of required 28 feet. Shed having side yard of 1 foot instead of required 2 feet, and 12.8 feet behind the front line of the dwelling instead of required 20 feet, and 6-foot fence on property line not having a required setback of 15 feet. Residence B District, north side of Westminster Lane, 1,031 feet west of West Court, West Islip.
Could give us your name and address.
Good evening. Larry Buscemi, Select Permits for our applicants this evening. Should I get right to the fence, Mr. Wexler?
Did you get his address?
Oh, I'm sorry, PO Box 679, Mount Sinai, New York.
You're trying to be smart.
Yeah, I know, right?
He's just trying to be.
See, you may give me a 6-foot fence this evening, and let me tell you why. There is a 6-foot fence there already, which belongs to the town of Islip. That is a recharge basin. I know it doesn't look like it because it's so overgrown, but that is a recharge basin to the west of the house. Yeah, you see.
So, the town owns.
I think this is their.
The town puts up white vinyl.
The white fence, no, the white fence is ours. The fence that's butt up against it, that's the same height as the town fence. Now, in addition to that, we're at a dead end. So the theory behind not having the 6-foot fence that close to the street is that it blocks visibility, but nobody's going to need the visibility here. It's a sump.
Town has.
And do we have any, fairness is what this is all about, isn't it? And with the other issues, the portico is a small 4x7 overhang in the front. It's still brings the FAR under 30%. The deck, the setback differences in the deck are de minimis. Yes, the shed is only a foot from the property, the side yard, but it is butt up against, if you can see, the sump. So it's not impinging anybody's property rights or enjoyment of their property. It's impinging the sump, which I have pictures is overgrown with poison ivy, in case you care. Which is not in the call. No, because if that becomes an issue, that one does block sight lines, if necessary, we'll cut it down. As you said, it wasn't in the call, so I didn't realize it was an issue. They may have, I don't know. No, they're here. Code enforcement talked about that fence. They gave you a violation. Apparently, they got something in the mail about it, so it will be dealt with one way or the other. Unless you want to give me a variance, right, right. I mean, if we could add it to the call and discuss it now, that'd be fantastic, but no, didn't think so. Thank you. Mary, did you get my email just now about the door being, did you get my email about the door downstairs being locked? We're all locked out. Ew. All right, well, as long as people, yeah, surprising. They let people like me in. Amazing. Thank you. Have a good night.
For the next one, since I did get that email.
Yeah, I got the written,
So application number 242-24, which was adjourned from April 23rd, 2024. We have a request from the applicant's representative for that application to be withdrawn. Since it was a second, well, he requested to be withdrawn.
Okay.
Since it was a second time hearing it, and we advertised it both times and notified the neighbors both times, I think the board's procedure in this case would be to dismiss the application at this point.
So I'll take a motion to dismiss the application.
Motion.
A second, all in favor? Aye, application is dismissed.
thank you.
Is that, yeah, that's it.
No. Well. Get down. Level-headed man. Application number 354-24, Jared Quinones. Permission to leave shed having rear yard of 2.5 feet instead of required 4 feet, and 6-foot fence on property line not having a required setback of 10 feet. Residence A District, southeast corner of Terry Road and Long Island Motor Parkway, Ronkonkoma.
Hello, Jared Quinones, 1011 Terry Road, Ronkonkoma, New York, 11779. So I'm sorry, I'm not really prepared. I didn't know it was going to be like this, but yes, sir. No, just the 6-foot fence. The shed has been removed. The shed has been removed. Yes, I don't know why it was on the variance. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Application number 355-24, Vincent and Lindsay Srock. Permission to erect 2-story addition, 10 by 18.9, leaving front yard of 31.8 feet instead of required 40 feet. Residence A District, east side of Chapin Court, 295.63 feet north of Alinda Avenue, West Islip.
Good evening. Vincent Lindsay Cyrock, 17 Chapin Court, West Islip, New York. We're requesting permission to erect a two-story addition, which would cause the front yard setback to be 31.8 feet rather than the required 40 feet. Apologies, I don't have application numbers, but I do have 3 properties in the near vicinity that have similar front yard setbacks. That would be 240 Curtin Avenue, where there is a 30-foot setback, 248 Curtin Avenue, which has a 29.5-foot setback, and 9 Chapin Court, which is 33.2 feet.
We think it was Cyrosky when they came and they took over.
Ellis Island.
Of course. Not like the liquor, I wish it was.
240 Curtin Avenue? No, I don't. I'm sorry. We just looked at setbacks in houses near, no, I don't. Sorry. He's our contractor.
James Griesmeyer, Larson Home Improvement, 364 Arcadia Drive, West Islip, New York. I manually drove around the neighborhood this morning and measured from the existing houses to the property line and double checked it on GSI. That's where those numbers are coming from.
That doesn't mean that.
These are original structures. If you drive the neighborhood and if you look it up, you'll see these are unexpanded cakes. It's not a side extension. And how did the house get built? In the 50s? I find it hard to believe, but if we could have it researched, that we would.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, it depends how quickly you guys get back on the FOIA request. If we get the FOIA request filed by Friday, how quickly we get back? Okay with you guys?
Yeah.
So essentially what they're saying is we'll file a request for those 3 addresses, let the town put together the paperwork, and then we can come back. No, West Islip. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell him on his face.
Yeah. Application number 356-24, Katie Sessa, trustee of the Susan Sessa Irrevocable Trust. Permission to erect one-story addition, 9.2 by 18.7, leaving side yard of 6.6 feet instead of required 14 feet, and total side yards of 21.7 feet instead of required 28 feet, and to leave detached garage having side yard of 1 foot instead of required 4 feet. Residence B District, east side of Rollstone Avenue, 317.1 feet south of Union Street, West Sayville.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Charles J. Brudy, architect, 30 Bethesda Lane, Sayville, New York, representing the property owner. As stated in the call, homeowner is seeking permission to construct a one-story side addition, leaving a side yard setback of 6.6 feet instead of the required 14 feet. Total side yard of 21.7 feet instead of the required 28 feet. And to leave a detached garage having a side yard setback of 1 foot instead of the required 4 feet. History on this house was constructed in approximately 1870. So there was no CO on this. We have currently submitted the compliance application and received the permit on that. The property is undersized for a B zone. It does not meet the 100-foot frontage that is required. I'm sorry, 75-foot frontage. As far as precedent, I did not find any unless planning has. And that goes along with the 1-foot side yard on the garage. With respect to the addition, which is only a 1-story, it is in line with the current side of the house. Storage. Right there, right where the arrow is. So it's in line with the north side of the house, 1-story. And if, yeah, squaring off the corner And if you look at the neighbor to the north, there is no structure in that area. Yep. It's probably about the same setback. Again, these were non-conforming lots. No shadows, one story. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
57-24, Marlene Santos Baez, permission to leave, one-story addition, having side yard of 12.7 feet instead of required 14 feet. Residence B District, south side of Ava Drive, 125 feet east of Pine Acres Boulevard, Bay Shore.
Good evening. My name is Salim Abraham. I reside at 254-10 Francis Lewis Boulevard, New York, 11422. Good evening.
1.7 instead of 14, I think there's a lot of that.
Thank you very much.
Application number 358-24, Sandro Vasquez and Kenya Rodriguez. Permission to leave accessory structure with attached roof over 17 by 57, having side yard of 0.5 feet instead of required 10 feet, including habitable space, interior walls, and plumbing, in violation of section 68-3 definitions. To leave detached garage having side yard of 3.8 feet instead of required 4 feet, hot tub having side yard of 17 feet instead of required 18 feet, patio having side yards of 1.2 feet and 3.7 feet instead of required 4 feet each, and driveway having side yard of 1.2 feet instead of required 4 feet, with front yard occupancy of 73.5% instead of permitted 40%. Residence AA District, south side of Commercial Boulevard, 1,278.13 feet west of Fulton Street, Brentwood.
Good evening. Salim Abraham, 54-10 Francis Lewis Boulevard, Roselle, New York, 11422. So this is a big one. Oh, so I would like to start with the driveway. The driveway will be reduced to meet the 40%. Okay, the first one, we will do the front yard for the driveway. So 73% to 40%. I believe the previous application I went to board, we went to 42% for the side yard, the front yard coverage for the driveway. So the owner can reduce that to 42%. That's possible. That's number one. 42%? Yeah, 42%, yeah. You used to do the deficit like 40%. Excuse me? 42%. Yeah, correct, for the driveway. Mhm. So that's number 2. No. The question I have is, I know when you have a structure above 500 square feet is 10 feet. Is there a way that we can cut back the building, the building basically, so where we be accessible to be cut back, it has to be cut back for that side of structure? Because removing it, replacing it and locate it is gonna be a problem, but if we can cut back toward the,
Is that what you said, you cut it down to 500 to get a?
no, I'm just asking.
Maybe I misunderstood you, I'm sorry. You can do it. It's just more. Gotta either reduce it to 199 square feet. Even then, it's habitable. I mean, it's not like.
For,
Numerous lots.
I know, and
Living around, don't know.
yes.
Oh, no,
Sco- huh? No, when they only buy the house, maybe they would. Huh? No, because they only receive a violation regarding the structure itself inside the cross structure. They have like a violation and everything. So I told him you have to, comply with the structure itself. So the 0.5 feet already, that was not something problematic. But the issue was also the structure has to be basically a structure. It's a structure not buildable. Maybe like a 1 bathroom to comply with the zoning, having a door facing outside. But the issue for me is that the size of the structure, what leniencies can have regarding to it. So if you tell me you have to remove the whole thing, instead of cutting back the building,
I'll make a motion to deny that portion of the application relating to the front yard occupancy of 73.5%. And to deny that portion of the application for an accessory structure with an attached roof over having a side yard of 25 feet that requires 10 feet in space, interior walls and plumbing, violation of 16-3, and to grant the balance.
okay. Thank you very much. Our next evening.
I believe we have a request for an adjournment on this next case. Application number 359-24, Ellen Beldy and Timothy Dempsey. I think we have a request for an adjournment.
All right.
So the request was made without time to notify the surrounding property owners. So the policy of the board would be to ask the applicant to appear to request the adjournment.
And is anyone else with?
Okay. The next available hearing would be great. July 16th? Yes. Okay. Sure. Brian Marcazzani, from the office of Christopher Eng, 93 Main Street, West Havel. Okay, thank you.
Application number 360-24, Victor Manuel Diaz. Permission to leave driveway on side property line not having required setback of 4 feet. Residence A District, east side of American Boulevard, 567.7 feet south of 2nd Avenue, Brentwood.
Hi, good evening. Christina Bravin, Morano Expediting, 2938 Hempstead Turnpike, Levittown, New York, agent for the applicant. Requesting permission to maintain the driveway on the side property line instead of 4 feet that's required. So Mr. Diaz purchased this home in 1996, and there was a parking spot paved sort of off to the side. And then in 2014, he renovated, had the driveway redone as it is today. The only reason why we're here is because there was a major fire last year, and it was brought to his attention that the driveway was out of compliance. Ideally, they'd like to keep all cars in the driveway. There's been a lot of vandalism there. Between his wife, himself, his cousin, and daughter, they have 4 cars. If you have any questions, I have the pictures if you need to see. And I submitted to the board a letter from the most affected neighbor.
Got it, thank you. Planning, any comments? No comments. Does anyone else in the crowd like to be heard on this application? All right, I'll take a motion, please. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I know. That's how they call it. As I said.
What are you at, the hockey game?
He wishes. Shh, sensitive subject.
Just don't play till Saturday, I know.
Application number 361-24, Margaret Brown Dominich and John Dominich. Permission to erect one-story addition, 15 by 16.8, leaving rear yard of 14.81 feet instead of required 25 feet, and floor area ratio of 27% instead of permitted 25%. Residence B District, northeast corner of Moffett Boulevard and Jefferson Avenue, East Islip.
Christina Bravin, Morano Expediting, again for the record. Requesting permission to construct a non-heated sunroom addition, holding a setback of 14.81 feet instead of 25 feet, and increase FAR from 25% to 27%. So the proposed sunroom is going to project off the kitchen and laundry room. It's a substandard lot at 6,600 square feet. Normally, they're 7,500 square feet. So it's making it difficult for them to comply with the zoning requirement. And unfortunately, due to the layout of the home, they don't have any other options or areas to put this in. And the house itself is only holding 31 feet, so there's really nowhere for them to build or make any improvements on the home, unfortunately. The house is holding 31, correct. And it's a substandard lot. We're only at 6,600 square feet, where it's normally 7,500 square feet for zoning B, so that's why we cannot meet the requirement. Yes, uninhabitable space could never be converted to habitable space. It's simply a sunroom. There's no plumbing, no heating, no lighting.
Setback requirement would be, but you
Right.
need to attach it to the house, right?
Correct.
So I know you've presented slightly different models to us that are only 11 feet deep by wider when you've had constraints with a shallow rear yard.
So certain models, you can remove panels and reduce the size because of the shape and structure with that type of cathedral ceiling. It makes it really difficult to achieve that.
What's the name of the ceiling?
Oh, gosh, it's escaping me.
It's fine. I understand.
Can't
what
think
you
of the
mean.
name.
I gave the board the elevations.
Let me just check the plans again. I cannot believe I can't think of this.
So it's set, you're going
This is the,
17 feet into the non-conforming, into the 31-foot rear yard, so it's kind of a deep model.
I believe if they took off one or two panels, we'd have to change the door. If they could even get a slider in there. We would have to go back to planning and
Why don't
to Four Seasons and have to redo the entire model if that's the case. Was there any other? You could come up and get sworn in. Yes.
So.
You have to say your
for-
name and your address.
My name is John Dominich from 39 Muffet Boulevard, East Islip. So with this particular model, they do not make this, the construction with the doors on the side, they can't cut off that one section of glass because that's where I guess the French doors are, and that's just the way that they built this model. So that they can't conform that to the construction. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So I think what's going to happen is then, I'm not sure how we're going to do this with Four Seasons because they had said that this is the only thing they can do for our house. And so I'm going to have to, yeah, so they can't do it. So that's why, Okay.
Yes. We'd rather adjourn. Let's get the next calendar meeting if you don't mind. We'll have discussions and get plans. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Thank you.
You want to call McGuire anymore?
Has anybody happened to arrive on the application of William and Elizabeth McGuire? She might have been. Application number 362-24, Suffolk Storage LLC, permission to install facial sign having area of 265 square feet instead of permitted 192 square feet, and height of 51 feet instead of permitted 18 feet, and to install ground sign having area of 65 square feet instead of permitted 25 square feet, and front yard of 7 feet instead of required 15 feet. Industrial 1 District, east side of Lakeland Avenue, 153.06 feet north of Wilson Boulevard, Bohemia.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the applicant, Steve Bertolino, 130 West Main Street, East Islip, New York. So what we have here is a 106,400 square foot, 4-story building that is 50 feet high. We technically have about 49 feet for the top, and the facial sign is supposed to be about 4 feet below the top of the parapet on the building. I don't know how the change was made to a 51-foot high sign when the building itself we show is only 49 feet. I happened to miss that when I was talking to Nick from planning the other day, but it caught my attention this afternoon. That being said, we are looking to install the sign quite high on the building. So this is a large building as you go down Lakeland Avenue, and you can see that it's a 4-story in an area where most of the buildings are only 3 stories. If we put the sign any much lower, it's going to look somewhat ridiculous because it's going to be kind of like in the middle of the building instead of up on top, where many of the signs located on the other industrial buildings along that corridor are located. So what we're asking for, I mean, the call of the meeting sets forth 51 feet in height. We still believe it's only 45 feet in height based upon a 49-foot height of the building and the sign being about 4 feet lower. Just as a comparison, I know Mr. Wexler's not going to like this, but on the ZBA 31619 at 2021 Lakeland Avenue in Ronkonkoma, which is on Lakeland Avenue, just about a mile north of this property. It's on the north side of Betts Highway. That was a three-story building known as StoreQuest. It was also a storage facility. And their sign height was 37 feet on a three-story building, which I presume was about 40, 41 feet in height. Ours, we're looking for this similar relaxation in putting that sign up on the top, quarter of the building, if you will, going to what we're saying at about 45 feet. Not necessarily, that's going to be the highest, not the other one. And so the ground sign is on a dual piling, two posts that are on there. And on that one, with respect to the ground sign, speaking with the applicant this evening, we're willing to lower that ground sign to 10 feet instead of 15, which does a couple of things. We can amend the call of the meeting, or we can just ask for lesser relaxation. So as you know, your height of the sign dictates how far your setback can be. We're asking for a 7-foot setback on a 15-foot high sign. If we reduce that sign height to 10 feet, we then have a 10-foot setback as opposed to the 15, and it's really only a 3-foot relaxation, or about 30% that we're asking for. Yeah, and I agree with you. As one of my arguments was going to be the proportionality of the sign that we're putting on this building, given the size of the face. The front of this property is 340 feet from end to end. Yeah, so when we put this sign on there, I mean, I drove down the other day, you look at like the truck sign, TRUX, it literally plasts across the width of the building. It's quite large. We're kind of in line with Restaurant Depot next door, which I believe there was, I know that's precedent that would be good because it's literally right next door. And then 35% station, I'd be granted on their signs. If the board has any questions, I'm sure I can answer them for you, and the applicant is here as well. I do have a lot more to cover, but you kind of cut me short on the facial sign. I presume it's not an issue. Yeah, we would, on the ground sign, we would reduce it down to 10 feet. Yes, I discussed it with Nick the other day, and, he was kind enough to give me his opinion so that we would be prepared for that. I spoke with the applicant tonight. Having it indirect, and here's a self-created issue, because the sign is going to be so high on this 4-story building, having some lights down on the grass and shining up is just impractical. I believe that the illumination generated from the lighting on the ground to reach the 40-foot high sign is going to be too much. If you had lights mounted on the building that kind of came out from underneath and was shining upwards, it's just going to be so unattractive, and we don't think that that's necessary. It's one of the things we did disagree with planning, that the lighting was a non-issue. However, we did discuss perhaps having an 11 p.m. shut-off, which the applicant would agree to. Now, we all know that that's somewhat hard to enforce unless you're driving by, but at least if a neighbor were to complain somewhere down the road, we could make the shut-off at 11 p.m. Well, I don't, Mr. Sullivan, I don't know what you mean, is it going to affect us? I mean, we'd prefer to have the lighting indirect. It would, I'm sorry, no, we do not. I don't believe we have to come back. So a couple of thoughts. Number one, I misspoke a moment ago. In my haste, I said we prefer indirect lighting. We do not prefer the indirect light. We want direct lighting. And when you talk about lighting from the ground up and you talk about some kind of illumination, from the building on the sign, it goes in contravention to what the town requires most developers to do with dark skies. I mean, I was just here a couple of months ago on a Nazaro parcel, and the issue was illumination, and we had the lighting coming down. I'm dealing that with another municipality. Everyone wants dark skies with the lighting to come down. So asking to have indirect lighting with the light shining up makes no sense to me. If the board saw fit to grant the application as submitted under the call of the meeting, I believe we don't have to come back. There's no pending application in planning or anything like that. Yes. Yes. No, no. Yes. And I recall that 100% FAR was, we're stacking the floors and we're counting all those little compartments where that's, well, Mr. Wexler, that's why I said it's very difficult to monitor that. However, if it is a condition and the neighbor were to complain that it was running at 2 a.m. in the morning and, preventing them from sleeping across that 4-lane highway, if that were a problem, then you could come down with code enforcement and say, hey, you're in violation of a condition, just like any other covenant or condition that's imposed on somebody. Yeah. Yeah. That was my understanding. It's right next door, yes. It was 48 square feet. I think it was a 50%. Restaurant Depot. Oh, absolutely. We only want the good. Nobody wants the bad. Um, Well, and you know, this, as some people will attest to, the computations are very hard to follow with the benefits and the bonuses that you get. We would be willing to go to indirect lighting on that sign as well, which I know, you know, gives us a little bit more bonus credits. The exact amount, I don't know if Nick knows what that would give us. I mean, listen, I know this isn't supposed to be a negotiation back and forth. On the ground sign, you know, I stepped up with the concession that we would definitely go down to 10. We would like the sign because of it's 339 plus feet across the front of this property. You know, if there were 4 buildings here, you would have 4 signs on that. We do have 3 buildings on this parcel. So even though you're only allowed 1 ground sign, it's along a long stretch of frontage. In addition, with the 3 buildings, we would be entitled to at least 2 more, maybe 3 more facial signs. We're only asking for 1 facial sign on the building and 1 ground sign. So although this is a larger ground sign, I think the trade-off is we're not asking for multiple facial signs, which I think we would be entitled to under the code. If the exterior, I read it as 397, 68, 397B2, exterior walls visible from the main thoroughfare, you would be allowed 1 for each one of those buildings. So again, these are just arguments, and I'm not trying to negotiate as though we're at a local bazaar. But I want the board to know we've thought about this, you know, in depth. We're trying to make a concession where we knew planning would have an issue with it. With respect to the ground sign, I mean, could we go a little smaller? I think dropping us down all the way to 40 feet over 340-foot frontage is a big ask. What? I didn't. No, he said he actually said we have 4 buildings on the parcel, but there's only 3 that, to my knowledge, that actually face or, you know, look at the main thoroughfare. You know, so, and if you think about that, we could put a sign on each one of those buildings, and we're not. We're only asking for 1. Well, if I would throw something out there, I mean, if Nick is saying maybe 40 and maybe there's a compromise in the middle and say it's, you know, 50, if the board were to, if the, right. Well, we'd like 50, Mr. Chairman, but it makes a nice number. It's 10 by 5. I mean, I have my own issues, again, with the computation of the ground sign. You know, but my client says he's got his sneakers on. We're ready to go. No, and that for the life of me, I don't know how they got that. Well, so we're still asking for the 7-foot setback, but the relaxation is much less because we're only 10. Exactly. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you. Good evening.
Okay. Application number 363-24, West Islip Gas, Inc. Permission to reconstruct fuel service station on lot having area of 11,506 square feet instead of required 40,000 square feet, and to erect canopy leaving front yard of 8.66 feet and two fuel pumps leaving front yard of 21.83 feet and 23.5 feet instead of required 35 feet each. Business 3 District, northeast corner of Higby Lane and West Islip Boulevard, West Islip.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the board. Kevin O'Brien, Law PC, offices 462 Sagamore Avenue, East Williston, New York, here this evening representing the applicant, and I'm glad to see that we saved the best for last. This is an application involving an existing gasoline service station. According to the COs, I think we've been operating there since in or about 1954 as a gasoline service station. Also, I do have here with me this evening Mr. Kevin Papazian from GPI. They are the licensed professional engineers who prepared the plans which are before the board this evening. Application has been in the process and the works for a little bit, in as much as, like I said, while the service station has been operating as a service station since 1954, we did come before planning and we came before the town board in connection with the applications. The property was originally located in the B1 zoning district as a pre-existing gasoline service station. Went to planning. Planning granted us the special permit for the convenience store for the building, and the town board granted the rezone. Certainly.
Existing gas
Correct.
property we get is way on the side.
Correct.
What are you doing? You going to raise that and rebuild it?
No.
What are you planning?
No, so basically, in a nutshell, what we're doing is, and we dealt with planning a lot. Originally, we were going to put 4 pump islands. That wasn't going to work. We have 2 pump islands currently. We're going to have 2 pump islands, so the same number of dispensers. They're actually currently closer to the road, so we're actually pushing those dispensers further into the property. So while we are seeking a relaxation, we're seeking less than what we currently have. We're going to keep the existing building, no change to the footprint. Roughly 5 feet, further from where they currently are. Then they're going to put a canopy over those pumps, but the canopy obviously is going to require the setback variance as well. And if you look at some of the other gas stations, the Mobil in the area, the Delta, they all have less than the required setbacks on the canopies and on their pump islands. Some of them are actually closer than we currently are. The building itself, the footprint and the envelope of the building is going to remain the same. No expansion to the building. It's just an internal conversion with the, so the conversion and change of use from repairs to a convenience store, complete upgrade to the exterior. The canopy facade would match the facade on the building. Currently, if you're at the site and you could see on the overhead, there's no delineation curb cut wise. It's just one massive open curb cut. So with the plans that are before the board have been reviewed by planning and the town board, we're going to have curbing, have landscaping, have channelization. So this way would make it more defined, easier to get in, easier to to get out. Really no landscaping on the site currently, all asphalt. We are going to add substantial landscaping to the site. So yes, the relief we are actually seeking is pretty much any existing service station in the town of Islip doesn't meet that 40,000 square foot criteria. The older ones have a tendency to be a lot less than, say, perhaps the newer ones. So we have the lot area criteria. There's really nothing we could do about that. And the setbacks, and like I said, we are pushing the pump islands further in, and we have the canopy that goes over. But sum and substance, that's what we're seeking to do, which is a substantial upgrade, very common in the gasoline service station industry throughout the island as well as in the town of Islip. I do have my engineer, if there are any particular technical questions that you would like answered. And the town board did impose covenants and restrictions at the recommendation of planning. We have executed those covenants and restrictions. They have been recorded in the county clerk's office, and we are abiding and plan on abiding with those covenants and restrictions that have been imposed.
That's no problem. I don't need much room. Good evening, John Davis, representing West Islip Association, PO Box 84, West Islip. We were involved in the original proposal that the applicant submitted with planning. We reviewed that, and the way we are looking at this is essentially what the applicant has said, that they're taking a substandard location, a substandard property, which I assume could continue on as long as it wanted to, as it is, and significantly improving it, particularly with the design of the building, the design of the facade on the roof, also ingress and egress points, which are a disaster right now. They're straightening all of that out. So we see it as a significant improvement to that area. We really don't have a problem with any portion of this application. Even the canopy looks like it's well designed to complement the building. So the association definitely is in favor of this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good evening. Appreciate it. Thank you, John.
Hey, everybody, we have 12 accessory apartments and two-family, family use only applications to renew for a period of 3 years.
Motion?
Motion.
All in
No.
favor?
And
Aye.
yes. Okay,
And no, McGuire never showed up, right? McGuire?
no McGuire.
Okay.